You say that astrology is based on the seasons and that the signs have traits aligned with seasonal changes, but the seasons are flipped here where I live in Australia, so how does that work? Western astrology came out of Europe, so the traits of the signs are aligned with that climate and culture. Other places in the world have different astrological systems that came out of their local settings. So it doesn't really matter what the seasons are like in Australia because you have a predominantly Western culture that uses the astrology from Europe. Now, if you go into Aboriginal astrology, it does align with that area in terms of climate, their thinking, and their values. The First Nation peoples didn't have the Libra scales embodying the equinox and the fall. They didn't have the wintry mountain goat. They had the platypus instead of the scales. There's an ant rather than a goat. And there's a brush turkey where Western astrology has the twins. The crab and the scorpion do match the symbols in Western astrology for the months of July and November, respectively. No astrological system is going to come up with a ram for spring when spring was at a different time of year and they never saw a ram. Astrology is always constructed through observation. What people saw around them each day is how they decided to interpret the clusters of stars. I'm including a rough correlation between Western astrology and the First Nation astrological system. This comes from the people of the Torres Islands, Australia. Have you looked at the chart? Is Trump going to get reelected? I've seen the chart and it's a loser. I really can't imagine a scenario in which that chart can win the election. It looks like Biden is going to be the nominee on the other side, and that begs a question. How can an establishment shrinky-dink who hides in his basement and can't get a decent live stream together going to win the presidency? It doesn't matter, though, if it's Biden or if Biden doesn't make it for one reason or another, because Trump has the losing chart, the way Hillary had the losing chart last time. What would happen with rulership if a new planet were to be discovered in our solar system? There's a general feeling that a new planet would probably be a more appropriate ruler for Virgo because in some ways Mercury doesn't cut it for the sensitive Earth sign, but in the absence of something more layered, Virgo makes do with Mercury. Or the new planet could be a co-ruler. It would depend upon what that new planet was about. What's a progress chart? A progress chart is a type of chart that shows the progress you've made in terms of the big picture of your lifetime. Progressions are different from transits because transits show what you're bringing in, the kinds of people and events you're attracting, the cycles in your life. Progressions show where you are internally. It's a type of reading that's especially helpful when there's a shift in personality. Why haven't I been very emotional for the past few years? I wonder why I'm so much more fluid now than I was when I was young. These are the types of questions answered by progressions. Now, there's three types of progressions. One began about 2,000 years ago, and so it's heavy on the older, fated kind of astrology, and it's called primary direction progression. This is figured using the Earth's rotation and the directions. I tried to get into it once, but I heard the words right ascension and axial rotation in the same sentence, so I went for a drink. The second type of progression is more modern, and it's called solar arc progression. There, you move all the planets and the ascendant one day's movement of the sun for every year of life. But the one most people use, and what they mean when they say progression, is something called secondary progression. In my experience, if people are talking about a progressed chart these days, they're probably referring to secondary progressions and calling them progressions. In this chart, all you have to do is drop down one line in the ephemeris for every year of life. Because the planets move slowly, by progression, you don't look at all the planets, just the fast-moving ones. Generally, the sun, the moon, Mercury, and possibly Venus, maybe Mars if something really dramatic is happening. Other events to look for is planets turning retrograde and direct by progression. Why do retrograde phases of planets make any difference when the planet isn't actually moving backwards and only seeming to move backwards? That's an interesting part of astrology. It's all about perception, not reality. What do things look like from the perspective of the Earth? That's what we use, not the way things actually are. And I think that's because the ancients who came up with astrology didn't know a whole lot about how things worked, but they could interpret what they saw with their own eyes. How is it that a fiery planet like Mars can rule a water sign like Scorpio? A fiery planet like Mars ruling a water sign like Scorp is easy enough to understand if you look at Mars as pure energy, which is what any planet represents. Mars is the pure drive to separate from others, stake your own claim, and fight for what you want. Everyone has this drive. The very first thing we do with it is we're born and take an independent breath. A planet can be seen as energy, and the sign it's in as the way it presents itself, the clothes that it wears. When you strip Mars all the way down to a basic drive to claim, fight, and defend, you understand how Mars can rule Scorpio. Do you answer all of your questions in the comments sections? It seems like you do. I'm a full-time astrologer, so I think of the comments section as part of the gig. Therefore, I read them all and respond. But that's my pleasure. I started this project roughly 4 years ago, and it wasn't long before I began to notice something stirring in the comments section. Each of the comments posted in response to the sun sign videos was a perfect expression of the sign covered in that video. Let's take the Sun in Libra video as an example. Every comment left there was sweet and delightful and charming and complimentary with a Venusian flair. The sentences people wrote even contained the keywords associated with Libra, such as grace, harmony, beauty. And for 3 of the last 4 years, that video stood out because it was the only one with no thumbs down. Just as is the habit of Libra, if the viewer had something negative to say, they kept it to themselves, erring on the side of harmony rather than rocking the social boat. And how about the inordinate amount of happy emojis and strings of hearts and flowers? You can see the goddess of love, ruler of Libra, watching over those comments. Okay, now let's go to the other side of the wheel and talk about Aries, a sign associated with the god of war. The ram is a well-known fighter, so those comments were of a different nature. Many were quite provocative. It was the first time I started being told that it was clear I out and out hated the sign of Aries. Somebody said I had a problem with my head, the part of the body ruled by Aries. Another person said that I had problems with my mother, who must have been in Aries, and my contempt for her was busting through the screen. This ever-competitive sign compared me to other astrologers, naming them and saying I didn't live up to their understanding of such a strong and wonderful sign. And why couldn't I see how easygoing they really are? I state in the Aries video that Aries has a superhero streak, and it likes to rescue the more vulnerable. So while some people wrote comments questioning my skills, in true Aries style, others rushed in to rescue me, defending me, telling the others to shut up because I had put a lot of time into these things and the price is right. The Aries comment section is a digital version of a bar fight. And on it goes through the zodiac, with the comments for Sag being grateful and full of jokes, as you would expect from the light-hearted Jupiter-ruled sign. The comments for Scorpio were always quite tough and gritty, as Scorpio is known to be. People use the space to confess their darker traits and personal flaws and to make intimate connections with other commenters. Oh, and the obsessive nature of Scorpio can be seen in the fact that the commenters seized on one sentence. 7 words that came out of my mouth were mentioned about 30 times in the comments. Scorpio focused like a laser on that. It's also where I get the most repeat views, the most loyal watchers, to be expected from a loyal sign with a mystical bent. Now, Capricorn commenters tell me I'm wrong in the highest numbers per capita. I'm negative. I don't say anything good ever. It's all a big goat bashing. 2 people told me they were leaving thumbs down in disapproval, do not like. Well, a Saturn-ruled sign is going to draw the grumpy goats, I thought. And then I began to wonder if the viewers were only watching one video and if they understood that I talk about the shadow of every sign. And the shadow talk goes on for about roughly 90 seconds. Then I timed the Capricorn video and I found that I actually talked about the shadow of Capricorn for almost 3 minutes. I went double long. So Saturn, ruler of Capricorn, who tends toward pessimism, possessed me to extend the negative without my awareness. So sorry, Capricorn. The responsible planet, the responsible sign, is of course the one that keeps me honest. So yes, I read every comment because I love watching astrology play out in living color. How can people nurture themselves and others and develop spiritually? Nurturing and caring for others and yourself don't have to be goals in themselves. They can be byproducts of loving thoughts. The quality of your life depends entirely upon your thoughts. Loving thoughts are the ones left over once fearful thoughts are released. Fearful thoughts are the painful, small ones that, from a spiritual perspective, mean nothing and probably aren't true. The best way to get around the ego's frightened thought system is to give those thoughts attention. I do something called inquiry. It's otherwise known as the work. The work was created by an awakened woman from Ojai, California called Byron Katie during an enlightenment experience, a kind of glitch in time. She created 4 questions that you ask of any negative thought. The questions require time and they take you down a rabbit hole. You get to see your thoughts, see around them, see them for what they are, see if they're true or a story. I've been surprised at the transformational power of inquiry, the sheer energy released, the relief people feel when an unbecoming thought can't find a place in their mind anymore, and when a loving thought replaces it. Inquiry is the fastest, most lasting route out of misery that I've ever witnessed. Of course, it isn't for everyone, but anyone interested can start with a book Byron Katie wrote called Loving What Is, which you can find on YouTube for free in audio form. You can also find 100 videos of her doing the work with groups of people on YouTube. Just search for Byron Katie, the work. But any route that results in loving thoughts is the way to develop spiritually. It's about thinking, not about action. Thoughts that come out of love cause you to know what to do to nurture yourself and others. Thank you for watching Secrets from an Astrologer's Desk, Cosmic Questions and Answers number 9. Stay tuned for all the ways you can get in touch for a birth chart reading, a progress chart reading, and full astrological services. I'm Joy. More videos to come.